Good morning. Thank you all so much for joining us today. My name is Teresa Miller, and I have the privilege of serving as the Secretary for the Department of Human Services. And I'm gathered here today with representatives and advocates to highlight a really important new program that I think a lot of us are very excited about. October is a time when many high schoolers are applying for college. And everyone on stage with me today wants to make it easier for children to go to college. But we're here today to discuss an important program that will help children in the foster care system. Too often, students from the foster care system do not have the opportunities and resources that they need to succeed. We know that only 7 to 13% of youth with experience in foster care enroll in higher education. We also know that of those who do enroll, only 3 to 10% will make it to graduation. Think about that for a minute. Those statistics are just staggering. So we all needed to act. And on June 28th, Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf signed Act 16 of 2019, the Fostering Independence Through Education Act. This new law provides tuition waivers for youth who are in foster care or adopted from foster care who are eligible for the Chaffee Education and Training Grant. This includes youth who are or were in the Pennsylvania foster care system at age 16 or older, and youth who were adopted or entered into custodianship arrangements from the PA foster care system at age 16 or older. This tuition waiver applies to public and private colleges and universities in Pennsylvania, as well as community colleges and most vocational technical schools. The law also requires educational institutions to designate a point of contact at the school who will be a resource for eligible students to identify and apply for financial aid and scholarships and to help them access community resources and educational support services. The tuition waiver can be for up to 5 years, and they don't need to be consecutive, or until the young adult reaches age 26. Application information for the waiver will be available in January of 2020, and the program will begin in the fall semester of 2020. We are really proud to highlight this program because we want to make it so that students from the foster care system only need to focus on adjusting to college life and getting good grades. We want to give students the ability to achieve a better life. We encourage all students in the foster care system to take advantage of this waiver program. And I'm now really pleased to introduce the prime sponsor of this bill who championed this through, Representative Dave Hickernell.
Thank you, Secretary, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. The Secretary did a phenomenal job of outlining the program, and I'm so happy to hear that the administration is moving quickly on implementing the provisions of this legislation. So we're actually ready to go, by the fall semester in 2020. As many of you know, early on in my career, I had the opportunity to begin to work with the Foster Parent Association in the state of Pennsylvania. Matter of fact, my constituent and good friend, Gary Krantz, who we'll be hearing from in a few minutes, came to me with a number of other foster parents and identified some problems in the foster care system in Pennsylvania. So we began to work on some legislation, and in 2005, we actually put into place a bill to ensure that foster parents and foster kids in Pennsylvania got the kind of supports that they needed, and that they were more streamlined and consistent, throughout the state of Pennsylvania. So we were fortunate to have that bill signed into law, and then we began working on something else, a bill to deal with making the home life of foster kids more like that of children who lived in traditional biological family homes, and we called that our Activities and Experiences for Children in Out of Placement Act. Took a while to get through, as most good things do, and we were fortunate to have that signed into law in 2015. During that time, they came to the legislature with another idea, and that was to provide higher education opportunities for children in foster care. And I don't need to go back through the statistics that the Secretary went through, but the number of foster kids who actually enroll in higher education is extremely small. And of course, those who graduate, it's a much smaller number, 10% or so, that actually even go to school. So we put together some legislation, I hate to say this, about a dozen years ago, to begin this process. And at that time, we're one of the few states that actually had a bill. Unfortunately, the bill languished in committee for a number of years, and last session, when I chaired the Education Committee, we held an informational meeting. We got the bill out of committee. Obviously, along the lines, we had to make a number of tweaks to the bill. And there's no perfect legislation in this building. We're willing to compromise. And fortunately, we got the bill, as the Secretary said, signed into law in June of this year. So for the first time in Pennsylvania, foster kids who I think we can all agree have been dealt a pretty bad hand in life are going to be able to access, higher educational opportunities and not have to worry about the cost. It's really been a humbling experience to be able to champion this bill. I can't tell you how many folks have come together, stakeholders, people from higher education, foster kids, to make this bill a reality. And, something that's truly going to change the lives of children in Pennsylvania. As a legislator, we pass a lot of bills, but rarely at the end of the day can you go home and look at your wife and family and say, we did something today that, for years, decades to come is really going to change the lives of kids, for better in the state of Pennsylvania. So I want to thank everybody that came together. I want to call out, a staff person who worked very closely with us on this bill, Christine Seitz, who put her heart and soul into this bill as a research analyst on the Education Committee for the last couple sessions. I know this bill means as much to her, and staff are obviously very important in getting these things done. The institutions of higher learning came together. Many of them had some concerns initially. We tried to address many of those, but at the end of the day, they're partnering with us, and we needed them to be able to make this happen. It's important to note that there are no new appropriations attached to this bill. How often in this building do we create a new program without an appropriation? We've asked and they've agreed. Higher education has come to the table and they're going to absorb these costs. Once these kids get, whatever grants they're eligible for, higher education is going to pick up the cost without a new appropriation from the General Assembly. That almost never happens here. So thank you to them for that. 12 years is a long time, but, sometimes good things take time. And I have to admit I didn't expect it would take this long, but I'm glad that we got it done. So thanks to all my colleagues in the General Assembly for getting this done. And at the end of the day, we certainly can't replace parents. But this new law will certainly greatly reduce the barriers that foster kids have faced for years and years and decades to higher education. So looking forward to good things happening here starting in the fall of next year. So thank you very much. And at that, I'll introduce my strong working partner from last session on the Education Committee, Jim Roebuck, who was just as enthusiastic as I was when I went to him and said, Jim, I'd like to move this bill. Extremely supportive, made sure that he answered all the questions on the other side of the aisle. And I'm proud that last session we got this bill out of committee unanimously, got it through the House unanimously, and we were on that same path this year. But of course, we were able to get it incorporated into the Education Code bill, and we got it done a lot more quickly that way. And I think we made a good decision to do it that way. So at this point, I'll introduce my good friend, Chairman of the Education Committee on the Democrat side, Jim Roebuck.
Thank you. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here with you today and to see the progress of this legislation. I believe in supporting higher education for youth in foster care is one of the best ways to help them to be successful. Higher education or training is critical to the success of young adults and key to obtaining financial success and freedom as an adult. Although 70% of youth in foster care aspire to go to college, a recent GAO report identified barriers affecting foster youth pursuing a college education. This legislation will reduce these barriers so that they can make a successful transition to adulthood. As Democratic Chairman of the House Education Committee, I'm happy to support this legislation. I hope that Pennsylvania will join the other 28 states that offer assistance to youth in the foster care system in seeking a higher education. There are many things we can do, but probably none is as important or perhaps as easy to do at this point as this is. It's beneficial to young people, and it's important to their continued welfare, and I'm very glad to be here to support it this morning.
Good morning. My name is Gary Krantz with the Pennsylvania State Resource Family Association. Some of the great points were already covered, so I'm not going to be redundant with some of the statistics, but basically our organization, we advocate for all the families who take care of the foster youth in care, foster, adoptive, and kinship families. And so I would say probably 12 years ago, like Representative Hickernell had said, we had one of our colleagues that's here, Lori Deck from OCYF. She gave a presentation on what happens to foster youth in care and her educational experiences and outcomes. It was really so disheartening when we were going over the statistics that our organization knew that we had to do something. Something had to be done. And so we're already working with Representative Hickernell, who had championed a couple of foster care bills already. And we approached him about this idea, and he's always, if you can do something about it, let's make it happen. So it's been a real grind over the last 12 years, but he never gave up. He's been a champion for the foster care and for the foster youth, and the really exciting thing about this is there are so many great people who got on board with this. It was just not the efforts of a few people. But the reality is, you know, the truth is that youth are removed from their families by no fault of their own. The older youth in foster care, the older the youth is, the harder it is for them, the harder it is to be successful in society. We take them from their parents and we adjudicate them in their system. And we really need to step up and do things. And this is a great piece of legislation to help all the youth in foster care. Again, it couldn't be done without the help of so many great people. I want to send a thank you out to the Juvenile Law Center, who was instrumental, the Educational Law Center, the Field Center for Children's Policy, Practice, and Research, the Foster Care to College Work Group, and another shout out to Christine Seitz, who worked tirelessly on this bill. Again, this is a great day. It's a great bill for the youth in foster care, not only for children in foster youth, but again, adopted after age 16. So it's going to give a lot of youth the opportunity to have a forever family because the educational experience is going to be taken care of. Again, thank you to Representative Hickernell, all the legislators, all the chairs, and thank you so much.
Thank you all. And I also want to just acknowledge a few more legislators that are up here with me who were not speaking today, but Representative Howard, Representative Toohill, and Chairwoman Boback, thank you for joining us, and thank you for being here. Unless you wanted to speak or say anything. Anyone?
I think it was all said.
Okay. With that, and again, I know there was a shout out to a lot of the organizations for everyone who was involved in this bill. This really is very exciting legislation and a really exciting day for foster youth. So if there are any questions, we'd be happy to take them. Otherwise, I think that concludes our our press conference. Yeah.
Is there anything that the agency plans to do to make sure that those that are eligible for the waiver will be able to get assistance?
So people know about it. I think that's something that we're working very closely with Department of Education on, because I think we want to make sure that everyone who could take advantage of this takes advantage of it. So yes.
And one more question. Covering room and board was an important component on the bill, the legislation. That didn't make it through to the final bill. Is there anything the agency plans to do to assist those who are with room and board in the future?
You know, I don't know that we've had those conversations, but that's certainly something we can think about, because I really do think as we look at foster youth, the more we can do to open up educational opportunities, the better off they're going to be. And again, the statistics here are pretty stark. So I think we'll certainly be looking for any opportunities we can to work with Department of Education and other partners to do everything we can to support as many foster youth as possible taking advantage of this. Any other questions? Yeah.
Like a rough estimate of how many people could be affected by this, how many students?
We did a rough estimate. I think there are previous reports out there that there are 900 or a little less than 900 kids eligible. I think those might be estimates of kids who are eligible today. When we looked at 17-year-olds who could potentially take advantage of this, we came up with over 1,900. Any other questions? Thank you all for being here. And again, thank you to everyone who made this happen.